Last Tuesday, I found the device hidden under my seat, a $300 professional unit that had been monitoring my every move for weeks. My 34-year-old son Marcus thought he was so clever. Track the old man's movements, make sure he doesn't visit lawyers or banks, keep him isolated until the trap springs. But Marcus made one crucial mistake. He assumed his 68-year-old father was helpless. So I took that tracker on a little road trip, straight to the Mexican border, and I let my son chase a ghost while the FBI waited for him with handcuffs. You see, when your own child tries to con you out of your life savings, using a fake fiancé and forged guardianship papers, you have two choices. You can be the victim, or you can be the one setting the trap. I'm Joshua Harvey, a retired maintenance supervisor from Texas. I raised Marcus alone after his mother died, and 3 days after I found that tracker, I watched federal agents arrest my only son for elder fraud. But before I tell you how I turned my son's surveillance device into his downfall, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you've ever felt taken advantage of by family, hit that subscribe button, because this story is for you. But Marcus wasn't always a predator hunting his own father. 22 years ago, when cancer took my wife Sarah in the space of 6 brutal months, I made a promise that would eventually destroy us both. Marcus was 12, scared and suddenly motherless in a world that had just stopped making sense. The night after Sarah's funeral, I found him curled up in our bedroom closet, clutching one of her sweaters, sobbing so hard his small body shook like a leaf in a storm. That's when I knelt beside him in the dark and whispered the words that would haunt me for decades. You'll never be alone, son. I'll be your mother and your father both. I promise you'll never want for anything. I meant every word. And I kept that promise with a devotion that bordered on worship. Every morning at 5 a.m., I became Marcus's everything. I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, even though Marcus's hair was too short to braid. I practiced anyway, because someday he might need it. I learned to cook the way Sarah had, measuring love in extra butter, in hand-cut sandwiches, in the perfect temperature of milk for his cereal. Marcus's lunch became my daily masterpiece. Peanut butter and jelly cut diagonally, just how Sarah used to do it. Apple slices in a small container with a drop of lemon juice to keep them from browning. A handwritten note tucked beside his juice box that always said the same thing. Dad loves you more than all the stars in Texas. I worked double shifts at Henderson Maintenance Company. My hands grew calloused from fixing broken pipes and faulty wiring. My back ached from crawling through industrial air ducts. But Marcus had clean clothes, pressed every morning, and hot meals waiting when he got home from school. While other fathers watched football on weekends, I was Marcus's personal cheering section. Little League games in the blazing Texas heat. I was there in the bleachers, sunburned and sweating, cheering every time Marcus swung the bat, even when he struck out, which was often because the boy had his mother's artistic soul, not his father's athletic coordination. "Great try, champ," I'd shout, and Marcus would wave from the dugout like I was the most important person in his world. Piano recitals where Marcus stumbled through chopsticks with the determination of a surgeon performing heart surgery. Art shows where his finger-painted trees looked more like green explosions. Science fairs where his volcano erupted exactly once before dying a disappointing death. I was there for all of it, proud as a peacock, loud as a carnival barker, completely and utterly devoted to being the father Marcus deserved. When Marcus turned 16, he wanted a car. Not just any car, a red Honda Civic like his friend Tommy's. Bright cherry red with racing stripes and an aftermarket sound system that could wake the dead 3 counties over. I had been saving for a fishing boat, a small bass boat with an electric trolling motor, something I'd dreamed about since my Navy days. Every month for 3 years, I'd put $50 into that boat fund, imagining quiet mornings on Lake Conroe, just me and the fish and the sunrise. The fund had grown to $8,000 when Marcus showed me pictures of Tommy's Honda. "Dad, if I had a car like this, I could get a part-time job after school, help out with expenses, be more responsible." The boat fund became the car fund that afternoon. We drove to Dallas the following Saturday and bought that red Honda Civic. Marcus was so excited he could barely contain himself, bouncing in the passenger seat like a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. "Thanks, Dad," he said as we signed the title transfer. "You're literally the best father in the world." The words should have filled my heart. Instead, they felt hollow somehow, like Marcus was reading lines from a script rather than speaking from his soul. But I pushed the feeling away. Teenagers are awkward with emotions, I told myself. He'd grow into gratitude. I thought sacrifice would automatically create appreciation. College applications arrived like bills demanding payment. Marcus wanted to study business at the University of Texas. Out-of-state tuition, room and board, books, fees, the total came to nearly $30,000 per year. I owned the house Sarah and I had bought as newlyweds, a modest 3-bedroom ranch with a mortgage that was nearly paid off. It was supposed to be my security, my insurance against an uncertain future. Instead, it became Marcus's college fund. I refinanced the house and took out a second mortgage, used the equity to pay for Marcus's first year at UT. Then I sold the house entirely and moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above Mrs. Rodriguez's grocery store. The walls were thin as paper. I could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television through the floor, her grandchildren running around upstairs on Sunday afternoons, the delivery trucks rumbling to life at 4 a.m. Marcus complained constantly about the noise, about the smell of cooking onions and garlic that drifted up from the store. "Dad, this place is embarrassing. What if my friends want to visit?" But it was what I could afford while paying for his education. Rent was only $400 a month, leaving more money for his tuition and expenses. "Just until you graduate, son," I promised. "Then we'll find something better." Marcus nodded, but I could see the shame in his eyes. Not shame for what I was sacrificing, but shame for being associated with poverty, even temporary poverty, in service of his dreams. The University of Texas graduation ceremony was the proudest day of my life. I sat in those bleacher seats wearing my only good suit, the same navy blue one I'd worn to Sarah's funeral 4 years earlier. Marcus walked across that stage in his cap and gown, and I felt every sacrifice had been justified. Every double shift, every skipped meal, every night sleeping on a fold-out couch while Marcus had the only bedroom. My boy had a business degree. He was educated, prepared for success, ready to take on the world. After the ceremony, Marcus introduced me to his professors, his friends, the dean of the business school. "This is my dad," he said, his arm around my shoulders. None of this would have been possible without him. For exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, I felt like the father I'd always wanted to be. The feeling didn't last. Marcus landed his first job at DataCore Systems exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after graduation. Entry-level analyst position, good benefits, room for advancement. I was prouder than if he'd been elected president. "Dad, I did it," he called to tell me the news. $42,000 a year to start, with performance bonuses and everything. $42,000. More money than I'd ever made in a single year during my entire career in maintenance. My son was officially more successful than his old man, and that felt exactly like it should. Then came the phone call that changed our relationship forever. "Dad, I need help with a down payment on an apartment. The company found me this perfect place, but I need $25,000 for the deposit and first month's rent. I'll pay you back when I get my first promotion." $25,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I had maybe $800 in my checking account and no savings to speak of. "Son, that's a lot of money. Are you sure you need that much for an apartment?" "Dad, this isn't some college dorm room. This is a professional living situation. The other analysts at work live in places like this. I can't show up to company functions living in some dump." My heart clenched like a fist. Marcus was ashamed of where he'd come from. Ashamed of the apartment above Mrs. Rodriguez's store, ashamed of his father who worked with his hands, ashamed of anything that reminded him of our humble circumstances. But shame aside, where was I going to find $25,000? The answer lay in Uncle Pete's rental property. My brother Pete had died of a heart attack 2 years earlier, leaving me his small house on Maple Street. I'd been renting it out to a nice family for $600 a month, enough to cover the property taxes and give me a small cushion for emergencies. The house was worth about $195,000 according to the county appraisal. If I could refinance it, pull out some equity. I drove to First National Bank that Thursday morning with a folder full of documents and sweaty palms. The loan officer was a young woman named Jennifer with kind eyes and a gentle voice that reminded me of Sarah. "Mr. Harvey, you're borrowing against your only major asset. This house represents your entire financial safety net. Are you absolutely certain about this decision?" I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone, the stress, the need, the barely concealed desperation. How could I let my son struggle when I had the power to help? "He's my boy," I said simply. "This is what fathers do." I signed the refinancing papers with hands that shook like autumn leaves. Marcus moved into his new apartment the following month. One bedroom with a view of downtown, modern kitchen with granite countertops, a pool and fitness center in the building. When I visited, he showed me around like a proud homeowner, giving a tour of his estate. "This is perfect, Dad. Exactly what I needed for networking and entertaining clients. Thank you so much. I'll start paying you back next month when my first commission check comes in." Next month arrived. No payment. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, Marcus explained that the training period at DataCore was taking longer than expected. "They're being really thorough with the new hires, Dad, making sure we understand all the systems before they turn us loose on real clients. Just give me another few months to get established." Marcus promised this was the last time he'd need help, but 8 months later, my phone rang again. "Dad, I'm in trouble. I had a car accident, and the insurance company is being difficult. They're saying I was at fault, which is totally ridiculous, but I need to hire a lawyer and pay for medical expenses out of pocket. $8,000, and I need it by Friday, or this goes to collections." $8,000. I had exactly $8,347 in my savings account, money I'd been setting aside for my own medical expenses as I got older. Every time I heard panic in Marcus's voice, my resolve crumbled like a sandcastle. I drove to the bank again, withdrew $8,000 in cash, met Marcus at a Starbucks downtown, where he grabbed the envelope of money like a drowning man grabbing a life preserver. "Dad, you literally saved my life. I don't know what I would have done. The stress was killing me." Relief flooded his face, and my anxiety melted away. This was why fathers existed, to catch their children when they fell, to provide safety nets when the world got dangerous. I believed every word because I desperately needed to believe, but the pattern was just beginning. $15,000 for a business investment opportunity that would triple his income within 6 months. $7,000 for emergency dental work after a crown fell out. $4,000 for a security deposit on an even better apartment when his lease expired. Each time, Marcus's voice carried that same desperate edge. Each time, I found a way to help. Drained my savings account, cashed in my small certificate of deposit, eventually started sending him $300 a month from my Social Security check. I began eating cereal for dinner to save money, canceled my cable television subscription, wore the same 4 shirts in rotation until the collars were so frayed, Mrs. Rodriguez offered to teach me how to mend them. "Joshua, you getting too skinny," she observed one afternoon when I stopped by the store for milk. "You eating enough food?" I smiled and changed the subject, but her concern lingered. "How do you explain that you're slowly starving yourself to fund your son's lifestyle?" I would rather waste away than let Marcus struggle. By the time Marcus turned 34, I had given him over $112,000 in loans, none of which had been repaid. My retirement savings were completely gone. The rental property carried a mortgage larger than its current value. Meanwhile, Marcus was thriving. He'd been promoted twice at DataCore Systems, bought a brand new BMW, took vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. He posted photos on Facebook, beaches in Mexico, ski slopes in Colorado, expensive restaurants in Dallas. I was happy for his success. That's what the money was for, right? To help him build the life he deserved. Then came the phone call that shattered my world. Dad, I have incredible news. I'm getting married. Her name is Sophia Mitchell, and she's absolutely perfect. Beautiful, smart, everything I've ever wanted in a partner. My heart lifted for the first time in months. Marcus was settling down, finding love, building a real life. Maybe now things would change between us. Son, that's wonderful. I can't wait to meet her. Actually, Dad, that's why I'm calling. Sophia really wants to meet you too, but first, we need to talk about the wedding. These things are expensive, especially when you want to do them right. Sophia has some ideas about how we can manage the finances, but we're going to need about $50,000. $50,000 was every penny I had left in the world. My retirement account held exactly $49,733. My entire financial future reduced to a number that barely covered one of my son's requests. Marcus, that's everything I have. I know it's a lot, Dad, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And Sophia has some really smart ideas about managing money. She actually wants to talk to you about your overall financial picture. Make sure you're set up properly for the future. Something cold crawled up my spine. Why would Marcus's fiancée want to discuss my finances? What did my overall financial picture have to do with their wedding? But before I could ask questions, Marcus was rushing ahead with plans. Sophia's going to call you tomorrow to set up a meeting. Dad, you're going to love her. She's got such a good heart. And she's already talking about how we can take better care of you as you get older. The call ended with promises of family dinners and wedding plans. I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to understand why happiness felt so much like dread. Meeting Sophia Mitchell was like shaking hands with a beautiful spider. She arrived at my apartment the following Wednesday evening precisely at 6 o'clock, wearing a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, and her makeup looked professionally applied. But it was her eyes that set off alarm bells in my head. They were constantly moving, cataloging, evaluating everything in my small apartment. "Mr. Harvey," she exclaimed, extending a manicured hand, "I've heard so much about you. Marcus talks about his father constantly." Her voice was honey-sweet, but those calculating eyes were busy taking inventory. The old television with the crack in the screen, the second-hand furniture I'd bought from Goodwill, the stack of bills on my kitchen counter that I'd forgotten to put away. Something about her smile made my skin crawl. Marcus seemed different too. Usually when we spent time together, he asked about my health, about Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs, about the maintenance jobs. I still did occasionally for extra money. Tonight he was quiet, watchful, letting Sophia take the lead in conversation. We sat down to eat Chinese takeout that Marcus had brought, orange chicken and fried rice from the place down the street. As we ate, Sophia asked questions, lots of them. "Marcus tells me you own rental property. That must provide nice steady income. Have you thought about diversifying your investments? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds? Do you have a will? With Marcus getting married, it's probably time to update your estate planning." Each question felt like a probe, like she was performing a financial examination disguised as dinner conversation. I felt like livestock being evaluated at auction. Marcus barely participated in the interrogation, just nodded along while Sophia gathered intelligence about every asset I owned or might own in the future. When they prepared to leave, Sophia hugged me goodbye, the kind of calculated hug that felt rehearsed rather than genuine. "Mr. Harvey, I hope we can spend more time together soon. I already think of you as family." But family members don't usually conduct financial audits during their first visit. After they left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been studied rather than met. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I Googled Sophia Mitchell. What I found made my blood freeze in my veins. The photos were all wrong. On Marcus's Facebook page, Sophia appeared in dozens of pictures, at restaurants, on vacation, at company parties. She looked exactly like the woman who'd sat at my kitchen table asking probing questions about my finances. But when I used Google's reverse image search, a trick my neighbor's grandson had taught me, Those same photos led to completely different social media accounts. An Instagram profile belonging to a woman named Jessica in Denver. A modeling portfolio for someone called Amanda in Phoenix. The same face, but entirely different identities. I called Tommy Chen, the computer security expert who lived 2 buildings over. Mr. Harvey, you've got a classic catfish situation here. See these modeling photos? They're professional shots, probably stolen from a legitimate portfolio. Someone created this Sophia Mitchell identity using another person's pictures. But I met her in person, Tommy. She was sitting right here in my apartment. Then either the real model is involved somehow, or someone hired an actress who looks like her. Either way, this Sophia Mitchell didn't exist online before 6 months ago. Her entire digital life is fabricated. 6 months ago was exactly when Marcus first mentioned needing money for wedding expenses. I tried calling Marcus to share my concerns. The conversation went worse than I had expected. Dad, you're being paranoid. Sophia is real. She's sitting right here next to me. But son, her social media accounts... Dad, not everyone lives their entire life online. Sophia values privacy. That's one of the things I love about her. When I pressed the issue, Marcus's voice turned cold in a way I'd never heard before. Dad, I think you're jealous. You've been alone since Mom died, and now that I'm building a life with someone else, you're looking for problems that don't exist. The word jealous hit like a physical slap. After that phone call, Marcus started visiting less frequently. When he did come by, Sophia was always with him. Never just father and son anymore. Always the 3 of us, with Sophia steering every conversation, and her suggestions became more frequent. Marcus, your father seems confused about what day it is. Yesterday he thought it was Tuesday when it was clearly Wednesday. Mr. Harvey, have you been taking your medications correctly? You seem a bit foggy lately. Maybe we should discuss power of attorney arrangements, just as a precaution. I felt my world shrinking around me. Marcus began treating me differently too. He spoke slower, as if I might not understand complex ideas. He repeated things unnecessarily, started checking up on me with questions like, did you remember to pay your electric bills, and are you eating enough vegetables? The shift was subtle but constant. I was being repositioned from father to burden, from advisor to someone who needed managing. Then came the surveillance. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on my door one Tuesday morning, her face creased with concern. Joshua, there's been a black car parked across the street for 3 days. Different people sitting inside, always watching this building. You expecting some kind of investigation? I looked out my window. Sure enough, a dark sedan with tinted windows sat under the maple tree across the street. As I watched, someone in the driver's seat raised what looked like a camera or binoculars. Someone was watching me. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since my Navy days 30 years earlier. I searched my apartment and car for surveillance devices. The apartment was clean, but my car told a different story. Tucked behind the registration papers in my glove compartment, I found a small black device about the size of a matchbook. Professional grade, with a tiny LED light that blinked every few seconds. I Googled the model number. GPS tracker with real-time monitoring capability. The device cost $300 retail. This wasn't some cheap toy from a detective magazine. This was the kind of equipment used by private investigators and law enforcement. Someone had been tracking my every movement for weeks, maybe months. There was only one person with regular access to my car. Marcus had borrowed it 6 weeks earlier when his BMW was in the shop for maintenance. He'd kept it for 3 days, claiming the repair was taking longer than expected, long enough to install professional surveillance equipment. My own son was spying on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, staring at that GPS tracker, trying to understand how the boy I'd raised had become someone I didn't recognize. The phone rang at 7 a.m. Marcus's voice was cheerful, casual. Hey, Dad, what are you up to today? Any exciting plans? He was testing the tracker, making sure it was working properly. Just the usual, son. Grocery shopping, maybe a walk around the neighborhood. Sounds great, Dad. Stay safe out there. After I hung up, I knew our relationship was over. The Marcus I'd loved, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, had been replaced by a stranger who saw me as prey. The public humiliation came on a Friday evening at Rosario's family restaurant, and it was orchestrated with the precision of a military operation. Marcus had called that morning, his voice warm with artificial enthusiasm. "Dad, Sophia and I want to celebrate our engagement properly. Take you to dinner somewhere special. There's something important we need to discuss about our future as a family." Rosario's was upscale for our usual dining spots. White tablecloths, extensive wine list, the kind of place where conversations carried and other diners paid attention to drama at neighboring tables. I should have known it was a setup. When I arrived at 6:30, Marcus and Sophia were already seated at a round table near the center of the dining room, not tucked away in a private corner where family business could be discussed quietly. Right in the middle of the restaurant where everyone could see and hear. The stage was set for maximum exposure. Sophia wore a black dress with pearls, looking more like she was attending a board meeting than a family dinner. Marcus had on his best suit, the one he wore for important client presentations. They both stood when I approached, greeting me with smiles that felt rehearsed. "Dad, you look wonderful," Marcus said, pulling out my chair. "How are you feeling today?" The question felt loaded somehow. "I'm fine, son. Looking forward to hearing about your wedding plans." We ordered dinner and made small talk about the weather, about Marcus's latest promotion at Datacorp, about Sophia's freelance consulting business that she'd never described in any detail. But something felt wrong about the entire evening. Their conversations seemed scripted. Marcus kept glancing at his watch. Sophia kept checking her phone. And I noticed that several people at nearby tables were listening to our discussion with unusual interest. 20 minutes into dinner, Marcus set down his fork and his expression changed. "Dad, Sophia and I need to talk to you about something serious. We're worried about you." My stomach clenched. "Worried about what?" "Your memory, Dad. Your judgment. There have been some incidents lately that concern us." The restaurant seemed to grow quieter around us. Other diners were definitely listening now. Marcus's voice had grown louder, more carrying, as if he wanted an audience for whatever was coming next. "What incidents, Marcus? I don't know what you're talking about." Sophia leaned forward, her voice professionally sympathetic. "Mr. Harvey, you've been showing signs of confusion, forgetting our conversations, getting mixed up about dates and appointments. Yesterday, when Marcus called, you didn't remember making plans to meet us tonight." I stared at both of them in complete bewilderment. Marcus called this morning to invite me to dinner. There were no previous plans to remember. "See?" Marcus said, loud enough for the entire section to hear. "That's exactly what we're talking about." The elderly couple at the table next to us had stopped eating entirely. A family with teenage children was watching our exchange like dinner theater. Even the waitstaff seemed to be slowing down their service to eavesdrop. "Dad," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the restaurant, "Sophia and I think it might be time to consider getting some help. Someone to manage your finances, make sure your bills get paid, ensure you're taking your medications correctly." My face burned with humiliation. Every person in that restaurant was now watching the senile old man whose son was trying to help him, the confused elderly father who could no longer manage his own affairs. "Marcus, I pay my own bills. I take care of myself. I don't understand what this is about." Sophia reached into her purse and withdrew a thick manila folder. "We've taken the liberty of consulting with an attorney, Mr. Harvey, about protective arrangements for elderly parents who might be experiencing cognitive decline." She opened the folder on the table between us. Legal documents, dense paragraphs of small print. But even from my position across the table, I could see key phrases: guardianship transfer, financial power of attorney, competency evaluation recommended. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. "This is all completely voluntary," Sophia explained, her voice loud enough to reach the neighboring tables. "Just some paperwork that would allow Marcus to help manage your day-to-day finances, for your own protection." Marcus nodded gravely. "Dad, we've seen too many elderly people get taken advantage of by scammers. This would just ensure that someone trustworthy is looking out for your interests." I understood now why they'd chosen this public venue. Social pressure, witnesses to my supposed incompetence, public shame designed to make me sign papers rather than argue in front of strangers about my mental capacity. The waitress approached hesitantly. "Is everything all right over here?" "Fine," Sophia said with a bright smile. "Just some family business. Nothing to worry about." But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and I caught something else in her expression. Anticipation, like a hunter watching prey walk into a carefully set trap. She slid a pen across the table toward me. "If you could just initial here and here, Mr. Harvey, we can get started on protecting your assets before something unfortunate happens." Every instinct screamed at me to grab that pen and sign the papers. End this public spectacle. Retreat to the privacy of my apartment and deal with the consequences later. The entire restaurant was watching now. I could feel their eyes on me, judging the confused old man who couldn't even manage a simple family conversation without creating drama. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the GPS tracker sitting at home on my kitchen counter. Maybe it was the fake social media profiles I'd discovered. Maybe it was the way Sophia's eyes gleamed when she talked about protecting my assets. Or maybe it was the realization that if I signed those papers, I would never see my money again. "I need time to review these with my own attorney," I said quietly. Marcus's face darkened. "Dad, you don't have an attorney. You can't afford an attorney." "Then I'll find one." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Sophia's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold and predatory underneath her concerned expression. Marcus looked genuinely angry, like a child whose tantrum hadn't produced the desired result. "Fine," Marcus said finally, his voice tight with controlled frustration. "You have 72 hours to get legal advice. But Dad, this situation isn't going away. With or without your cooperation, Sophia and I are going to make sure you're properly taken care of." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sophia gathered up the legal documents with practiced efficiency. "We'll contact you on Monday, Mr. Harvey. Hopefully by then you'll understand that we're only trying to help." They stood to leave, and I remained sitting at that table, surrounded by the stares and whispers of strangers who'd just witnessed my public humiliation. I paid the check with hands that trembled like autumn leaves. The walk to my car felt like a death march. Every step took me further from the family I'd thought I had, and closer to a reality I wasn't ready to accept. Pause here and tell me, what would you have done if you discovered your own child was planning to steal from you? Would you confront them or plan your own counterattack? Let me know in the comments. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the legal documents until my eyes burned, reading every word, every clause, every subparagraph that would have given Marcus and Sophia complete control over my life. By 3 a.m., I knew I had to fight back. I fired up my old laptop and started researching. Elder financial abuse, guardianship fraud, romance scams targeting widowers. What I found made me physically sick. This wasn't Marcus's first rodeo. Using Sophia's real face from the stolen social media photos, I found court records from Nevada, news articles from Arizona, a conviction in California for bilking an 83-year-old retired teacher out of her life savings. The woman's real name was Rebecca Santos. She specialized in what the FBI called sweetheart scams, building romantic relationships with vulnerable elderly men, then introducing family concerns about their mental capacity. 3 previous victims, all widowers, all between the ages of 65 and 75, all of whom had signed over their assets to protect themselves from their own supposed incompetence. Marcus was either Rebecca's latest recruit or her latest victim. But given the GPS tracker, the calculated public humiliation, the precise 72-hour deadline, I didn't think my son was a victim. Marcus knew exactly what he was doing. My only child had become my enemy. That night changed everything inside me. I sat alone in my apartment until sunrise, surrounded by family photos that now felt like evidence from a crime scene. Marcus at his high school graduation, Marcus on his first day of college, Marcus and me at his 21st birthday, both of us laughing at some joke I could no longer remember. When did the boy I raised become a stranger planning to rob me? The grandfather clock in my hallway, the one Sarah had inherited from her grandmother, chimed every hour through that sleepless night. Each chime marked another hour of my old life dying, another hour of accepting that the son I'd loved no longer existed. I pulled down the shoebox from my bedroom closet. 22 years of memories packed into a cardboard container that once held work boots. Marcus's report cards from elementary school, his letters from summer camp, written in careful cursive on lined paper, the Father's Day cards he'd made with construction paper and glue sticks. World's greatest dad, one said in red crayon. He was 8 years old when he made it, missing his 2 front teeth, proud as a peacock to give me something he'd created with his own hands. I realized I was mourning my son while he was still alive. The Marcus who wrote that card was gone, had been gone for years, replaced gradually by someone who saw me as a resource to exploit rather than a father to love. Someone who could plant surveillance devices in my car and orchestrate my public humiliation without losing a single night's sleep. At 5 a.m., with the first gray light of dawn creeping through my windows, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called the FBI. The phone rang 3 times before a professional voice answered. Federal Bureau of Investigation, how may I direct your call? I'd like to report elder financial abuse involving interstate fraud. The words felt like stepping off a cliff with no parachute. Agent Patricia Walsh arrived at my apartment that afternoon, mid-40s, graying brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, tired eyes that had seen too much human cruelty. She carried a digital recorder and a thick manila folder that looked ominously official. Mr. Harvey, thank you for calling us. Elder fraud is one of the fastest-growing crimes in America, and most victims never report it because the perpetrators are family members. I showed her everything. The GPS tracker from my glove compartment, the printed screenshots of Rebecca Santos's fake social media profiles, the guardianship documents that Marcus and Sophia had tried to force on me at the restaurant. Agent Walsh's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. She opened her folder and pulled out a collection of photographs that made my stomach turn. Rebecca Santos in an orange jumpsuit from her Nevada arrest. Mugshots from Arizona and California. News articles about elderly victims who'd lost their life savings to her schemes. Mr. Harvey, you're dealing with a professional operation. Rebecca Santos has been running sweetheart scams for at least 5 years. She finds lonely elderly men, builds relationships over several months, then gradually isolates them from friends and family while stealing their assets. But what about Marcus? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Is he a victim too, or is he working with her? Agent Walsh studied the GPS tracker, the timeline of events I described, the coordinated nature of the restaurant ambush. Mr. Harvey, I've been investigating financial crimes for 18 years. GPS surveillance equipment isn't something you stumble into accidentally. Your son either recruited Ms. Santos as a partner, or she recruited him. Either way, he's a willing participant in this scheme. The words hit me like physical blows to the chest. My son wasn't being manipulated by some criminal mastermind. He was the criminal mastermind, or at least a willing partner in destroying his own father. What can we do about it? I asked. We need them to commit the crime across state lines. That gives us federal jurisdiction and much more serious prison sentences. Do you think you can convince them to travel somewhere with you? An idea was already forming in my mind. Sarah, my wife, Augie, and I honeymooned in Mexico 35 years ago in a little town called Rosarito Beach, just across the border from San Diego. I could tell them I want to sign the papers there for sentimental reasons. One last romantic gesture before I give up my independence. Agent Walsh smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Mr. Harvey, I think you just solved our jurisdiction problem. We spent the next 3 hours planning an operation that felt surreal. I would call Marcus and agree to sign the guardianship papers, but insist on doing it in Mexico as my final request. Agent Walsh would fit me with a wire to record their confessions. Once they crossed state lines with the intent to commit fraud, the FBI could arrest them for federal crimes, carrying sentences of 15 to 20 years. This could be dangerous, Mr. Harvey. If they suspect you're cooperating with law enforcement, the situation could escalate quickly. Are you sure you want to take this risk? But I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in months, I had a plan that didn't involve being a victim. I wasn't helplessly waiting to be robbed by my own family. I was taking control of my life and teaching my son about consequences. Agent Walsh, how long do people typically serve for elder fraud with these enhancements? Given their criminal history and the interstate nature of the crime, 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Marcus would learn what it felt like to have his freedom taken away by someone he trusted, just like he'd planned to do to me. That evening, I practiced my performance in the mirror. The confused, frightened elderly man ready to surrender his independence. The grieving widower who wanted one final sentimental gesture before signing his life away. It wasn't hard to channel those emotions. In many ways, that's exactly who I'd become over the past year. Confused, frightened, isolated, and manipulated by people I'd trusted. The difference now was that I was choosing to be those things temporarily rather than permanently. I called Marcus at 8 p.m., keeping my voice weak and defeated. Son, I've been thinking about what you and Sophia said at dinner, about needing help with my finances. Dad, that's wonderful. I'm so relieved that you're being reasonable about this. The eagerness in his voice was nauseating. I want to sign the papers, Marcus, but I have one request. Of course, Dad, whatever you need. I want to do it in Mexico, in Rosarito Beach, where your mother and I spent our honeymoon. It seems fitting, you know, ending one chapter of my life where the best chapter began. There was a pause while Marcus calculated. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, weighing the inconvenience against the payoff. Dad, that seems unnecessarily complicated. Why not just sign the documents here in Texas? I played my part perfectly. Marcus, I'm giving you my house, my savings, every dollar I've worked 43 years to earn. It's the only thing I'll ever ask of you to again. Can't you give me this one sentimental gesture before I lose my independence forever? Another pause. Then Sophia's voice in the background. Urgent whispers I couldn't quite make out. Of course, Dad. Of course we can do that. When were you thinking? This Thursday. I'll drive down to San Diego. You and Sophia can meet me there. We'll cross the border together, find a notary, sign the papers. Maybe have dinner at that little restaurant where your mother and I celebrated our first anniversary. I could hear excited whispers on the other end of the line. Dad, Sophia thinks it might be better if we all drive down together. You know, in case you get tired on such a long trip. We could rent a car, make it like a family road trip. Perfect. They wanted to control my transportation, ensure I couldn't escape or change my mind once we were away from home. That sounds wonderful, son. Just like old times. Except the old times had never included my son planning to rob me. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at that Father's Day card from 26 years ago. World's greatest dad, written in a child's careful handwriting. Tomorrow, I would help send that child to federal prison. It felt like the right thing to do. Wednesday afternoon, Agent Walsh returned to my apartment with equipment that looked like something from a spy movie. The recording device was smaller than a pack of gum, designed to be taped to my chest with surgical adhesive. Thin wires ran down my arms, connecting to a transmitter hidden in my belt buckle. The whole system was virtually undetectable unless someone specifically searched for it. Remember, Mr. Harvey, we need clear verbal confessions. Get them to discuss their plans for your money. Make them explain the scheme in detail. The more they talk, the stronger our case becomes. What if they don't confess? What if they're more careful than we expect? Agent Walsh connected a small earpiece that would let her communicate with me during the operation. They won't be careful. Greed makes people careless, and they think you're a helpless old man who poses no threat. They'll talk freely because they assume you can't do anything to stop them. That evening, Marcus and Rebecca arrived in a rental car, a silver sedan with California plates. Something about keeping the miles off Marcus's BMW, they claimed, but I knew the real reason. Rental cars were harder to trace if something went wrong. Rebecca wore a navy blue dress and pearls, like she was attending a business meeting rather than a family trip. Mr. Harvey, are you excited about tomorrow? She asked as we loaded my overnight bag into the trunk. It's going to be such a relief to have all this financial uncertainty resolved. Her voice was honey sweet, but her eyes were calculating the value of everything I owned. Even now, she was performing an inventory, estimating how much money they'd steal once I signed those papers. I'm nervous, I admitted, playing my role. It's frightening to give up control after so many years of independence. Marcus caught my eye in the rearview mirror as we pulled away from my building. Dad, you're not giving up control. You're gaining protection. Rebecca and I will make sure your money is invested properly, that your bills get paid on time, that you have everything you need. What happens to my house? Rebecca's eyes lit up like slot machine reels hitting a jackpot. Oh, we'll take excellent care of your property. Maybe use it as rental income for your care expenses. Maybe sell it and invest the proceeds. Whatever generates the best return for your long-term financial security. The FBI wire captured every word. 2 hours into the drive, they stopped pretending I couldn't hear them. Once the old man signs the papers tomorrow, Rebecca said, apparently forgetting I was sitting 3 feet behind her, we'll need to move quickly on the asset transfers. I've got the offshore account set up, and my contact in the Caymans is ready to receive the funds. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. How long do you think we have before anyone realizes what happened? Months? Maybe longer. The beauty of guardianship fraud is that it looks completely legal from the outside. By the time social services does a welfare check, we'll be long gone with new identities. They were discussing my future like I was already dead, planning to strip away everything I'd worked for, then disappear while I spent my final years in some state-run nursing home, wondering what had happened to my life savings. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed that a 70-year-old man was helpless. An hour outside San Diego, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it and smiled with genuine excitement. Perfect. Our contact in Tijuana confirmed the notary appointment for tomorrow at 2 p.m. After your father signs the documents, this will all be over. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand affectionately. Then we can finally start our real life together. I closed my eyes and thought about the FBI agents who were tracking our progress through my wire transmission, about the federal prosecutors preparing arrest warrants, about the justice that was less than 24 hours away. Thank you both for taking care of me, I said quietly from the back seat. I don't know what I would have done without family. The lies came so easily to them. We love you, Dad, Marcus said, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. That's what family does for each other. If that was love, I was better off without it. We checked into adjacent rooms at a Holiday Inn near the border crossing. Rebecca insisted on keeping my credit card to handle incidentals, but really to ensure I couldn't disappear during the night. As I lay in that unfamiliar bed, listening to their muffled conversation through the thin wall, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Tomorrow, this nightmare would be over. Either Marcus and Rebecca would be arrested, or their plan would succeed, and I'd spend my remaining years as their victim. But at least the uncertainty would end. I'd done everything I could to protect myself and warn other potential victims. Now it was up to the justice system. Thursday morning arrives gray and cool, with fog rolling in from the Pacific Ocean. Marcus and Rebecca are excited, chattering over breakfast about their plans for after the signing. They've dropped all pretense now, discussing my money like it's already theirs. The house should sell quickly in this market, Rebecca says, cutting her pancakes with surgical precision. Probably get asking price, maybe more. How much do you think that property's worth? Marcus asks. $220, maybe $230, plus his savings and the rental income from that other property. All told, we're looking at close to $400,000. They're planning my financial death over breakfast, and they're including me in the conversation like I'm already too senile to understand, but I understand perfectly. Agent Walsh's voice crackles through my hidden earpiece. Perfect, Mr. Harvey. Keep them talking. We drive to the border crossing at 10 a.m. Marcus parks in the tourist lot, casual as if we're visiting Mexico for vacation instead of fraud. Dad, you should use the restroom before we cross, Rebecca suggests helpfully. The facilities on the Mexican side aren't as clean. I nod and walk toward the U.S. Customs building, my heart hammering. Inside, Agent Walsh is waiting by the men's restroom, dressed like a tourist in jeans and a San Diego Padres t-shirt. "Mr. Harvey, are you ready?" "I've been ready for months." She hands me a small device, a GPS tracker identical to the one Marcus planted in my car. "Put this in your pocket. If something goes wrong, we can find you anywhere in Mexico." The irony tastes like sweet revenge. I walk back to where Marcus and Rebecca wait by their rental car. They're studying a map of Tijuana, already planning their escape route after the documents are signed. "Ready, Dad?" Marcus asks with false cheer. "Ready as I'll ever be." We walk toward the border checkpoint together. I'm between them, flanked like a prisoner being escorted to execution. Other tourists move around us, families with children, couples holding hands, normal people living normal lives. But we're not normal people anymore. The Mexican border guard stamps our passports efficiently. Marcus shows him our business documents, the guardianship papers that will make them rich and leave me penniless. "Enjoying your retirement, sir?" the guard asks me in accented English. "Every minute of it," I reply. We're across the border now, standing on Mexican soil, still within the FBI's operational range, thanks to the interstate nature of their crime. Rebecca checks her phone for directions to the notary's office where I'll sign my life away. "Just 2 blocks from here," she announces. "A nice private office where we can handle everything discreetly." But we're not going to any notary's office. We start walking down the main tourist street, past restaurants and souvenir shops and vendors selling handmade crafts. Just another American family enjoying a day trip to Mexico. Then I stop walking. "Wait," I say. "I need to tell you both something first." They turn to face me, and I see the first flicker of concern cross Rebecca's face. "What is it, Dad?" Marcus asks. "I know who you really are, Rebecca Santos." Her face goes white as paper. Marcus takes a step backward, confusion replacing confidence. "I know about your conviction in Nevada. I know about the elderly teacher in Arizona whose life savings you stole. I know about the GPS tracker you had Marcus plant in my car." Now they're both backing away from me. "Dad, you're confused," Marcus says, but his voice is shaking. "Sophia isn't—" "Shut up, Marcus." Rebecca's honey-sweet voice is gone, replaced by something cold and sharp. "He knows everything." She reaches into her purse, and for a terrifying moment, I think she might have a weapon. Instead, she pulls out her phone. "We're leaving, right now, back to the car." But as they turn toward the border crossing, Agent Walsh and 4 other FBI agents step out from behind parked cars and vendor stalls. "Rebecca Santos, Marcus Harvey, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder fraud." The handcuffs click around Rebecca's wrists first, then Marcus's. Other tourists stop and stare as the agents read them their rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Marcus looks at me with complete bewilderment. "Dad, what did you do? What's happening?" "I taught you about consequences, son." But I'm your family. I'm all the family you have left." "Family doesn't try to rob each other, Marcus." I watch as they load him into the back of an FBI vehicle. My only child, the boy I raised from the age of 12, now facing 15 to 20 years in federal prison. He's calling my name as the car drives away, but I don't turn around. Agent Walsh appears beside me as we walk back across the border. "How do you feel, Mr. Harvey?" I look back toward the spot where Marcus was arrested. The son I'd sacrificed everything for, now in federal custody because of evidence I provided. I feel like I can breathe again. The trial takes place 8 months later in federal court in downtown San Diego. Marcus pleads guilty to conspiracy and elder fraud charges, hoping for a reduced sentence. His attorney argues that he was manipulated by Rebecca, seduced into the scheme by promises of love and easy money. But the evidence tells a different story. The FBI found emails on Marcus's laptop dating back 18 months, long before he supposedly met Rebecca. Messages discussing my financial situation, my isolation, my vulnerability. Messages about the perfect target he'd found in his own father. Rebecca goes to trial and loses spectacularly when prosecutors present evidence of 17 elderly victims across 6 states. Men who'd lost their homes, their savings, their dignity to her carefully orchestrated cons. I testify on the second day. The prosecutor, a serious woman in her 40s named Janet Rodriguez, asks me to describe the emotional impact of discovering my son's betrayal. Your Honor, I raised Marcus alone from the age of 12. I gave him everything: my money, my time, my love, my future security. I worked double shifts and lived in poverty to pay for his education. In return, he tried to steal not just my life savings, but my independence and dignity. That's not the behavior of a son. That's the behavior of a predator who happened to share my DNA. The judge sentences Rebecca to 25 years in federal prison. Marcus receives 12 years, more than his attorney hoped for because the judge considers family betrayal an aggravating factor. Mr. Harvey, the judge says during sentencing, you have shown remarkable courage in coming forward. Elder abuse is a crime that destroys families and communities. Your willingness to seek justice, even against your own son, sends a clear message that this behavior will not be tolerated. The day of Marcus's sentencing, he looks at me from the defendant's table. His mouth moves silently. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. But some betrayals cut too deep for apologies to heal. I don't respond. I collect my coat and walk out of the courthouse into the California sunshine, leaving my son to face the consequences of his choices. The FBI's investigation reveals the full scope of the fraud network. Rebecca had been recruiting young men with financial problems, Marcus among them, to target their elderly relatives. The operation stole nearly $2 million from victims across the Southwest. Most of that money gets returned to the families. I receive a check for $137,000, all the money Marcus had borrowed over the years, plus interest and penalties assessed against the criminal enterprise. Money I'd written off as gone forever. But more important than the financial recovery is what Agent Walsh brings to my apartment on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the trial. Mr. Harvey, the Bureau wanted you to have this. It's a formal commendation from the FBI director, thanking me for my cooperation in breaking up a major elder fraud ring. The letter acknowledges that my courage prevented dozens of other families from becoming victims. The commendation is signed, stamped with the official FBI seal, and suitable for framing. That letter sits on my kitchen table now, next to a newspaper clipping. The headline reads, Texas man helps FBI break elder fraud ring. The article includes a small photo of me standing outside the courthouse after Rebecca's sentencing. I look older than I remember, but my eyes are clear and focused. I look like a man who fought back and won. I live quietly now in a small ranch house in a different part of town. Use some of the recovered money for a down payment. Started fresh at 69 years old in a neighborhood where no one knew my history. The house has 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for an office, and one that stays empty, just in case I ever have legitimate family visitors, though I don't expect that to happen. The neighborhood is full of young families. Children ride bicycles past my window every afternoon. Their parents wave when they see me working in the garden. Mrs. Chen next door brings me homemade soup when I'm feeling under the weather. The Martinez family invites me to their backyard barbecues. These people aren't family by blood, but they care about my well-being anyway. They check on me because they want to, not because they're planning to rob me. I'm not lonely anymore. Sometimes I think about Marcus in federal prison, whether he's learned anything from the experience, whether he misses the father who raised him or just regrets getting caught. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. Instead, I think about the future, about the small legacy I'll leave to the Boys and Girls Club downtown, where other children might learn different lessons than the ones I accidentally taught my son. This morning, I'm writing a letter, not to Marcus. We haven't spoken since his sentencing, and I doubt we ever will again. This letter is for other elderly parents. The letter sits on my kitchen table next to the FBI commendation and the newspaper clipping. Evidence that one old man's refusal to be a victim made a difference in the world. If you're an elderly parent facing pressure from your adult children about your finances, about your mental capacity, about signing documents for your own good. You're not alone. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Investigate suspicious behavior. Don't let family guilt override your survival instincts. And remember, love should never require you to be a victim. And the letter will go to senior centers, elder law attorneys, anyone who works with vulnerable elderly people. Maybe it will save someone else from learning the hard way that blood relation doesn't guarantee loyalty. Maybe that's legacy enough. I fold the letter, seal it in an envelope, and walk to the mailbox at the end of my driveway. The morning sun feels warm on my face. Mrs. Chen's granddaughter waves at me from her tricycle. This is what peace feels like. If this story helped you recognize the warning signs of elder abuse, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about standing up to family betrayal, and remember, you're never too old to fight back smart.